Let's return now to the looming deadline tomorrow for former Victorian Liberal leader John Pesutto, who's been ordered by the federal court to pay some $2 million in legal costs, having lost his case, the defamation case against his colleague Moira Deeming. Now, understandably, Liberals concerned about Pesutto's seat of Hawthorn. They don't want a by-election and they want to avoid it at all costs. Are having discussions about the Liberal Party and one of its financial entities, the Cormack Foundation, stepping in to bail out John Pesutto. Last night I said that would be morally wrong to use donors' money in that way. Well, the feedback I've had from you and party members around the country, I tell you what, you feel very strongly about it. You do not want this to happen. Now, John Pesutto can pay up, and if he can't pay, that's a lot of money, I accept that. And those who backed him, his financial backers, the billionaires and others, well, they should pay up in his behalf. And this is a mess, but it's one of Pesutto's own making. And it's something that is being discussed right around the country. Lucy Zellick's joining me now. She's put it into perspective in a brilliant column in the News Corp papers today. I'm pleased to say she joins me now. Well, Lucy, I read your column last night. It was a cracker. You're not inside the party like me, and I've been following this case for a long time, but you gave it a lot of moral clarity. And you're saying that, the Liberal Party's got problems with women, and then they're doing this to one of their own, and they wonder why.
It's true, Peter, and unfortunately it's a tag that they haven't been able to shake since the biggest fraud in feminist history, Julia Gillard, decided to get up at that infamous speech and hurl those nasty slurs at the then Tony Abbott at the time. And I think it's just a disgrace, particularly given that she, under her leadership, decided to include gender identity in the Sex Discrimination Act. So it's all quite comical. But at the end of the day, what we're seeing play out here in Victoria, it is a mess, and it is by John Pesutto's hand. I mean, nobody wants to see anyone end up in this scenario. I don't hope that he ends up bankrupt. We don't like to see this infighting within the Liberal Party. We don't also like to see that they're having to sue one another just to be able to clear their names. But this is a reality that Moira Deeming was thrust into, unfortunately. He was given an opportunity, as the judgment read in her case in December 2024, when she won that defamation trial. He was given the opportunity to, settle this matter before it went to the federal court for a sum to the tune of $99,000 without an apology attached to it, which is crazy, but refused not to. Took his arrogant position all the way to the federal court, full well knowing that this could be something that could potentially bankrupt him and ruin his political career. Now, it's a shame that this is occurring. I'm a Liberal Party loyalist and have been for 20 years, but ultimately, if you are going to falsely accuse someone of being a neo-Nazi for simply standing up at a rally and declaring biological reality and advocating for the safety of women and girls in single-sex spaces and sport, then you should pay the consequences for that. And as I said in my column, you made your bed now, John, you need to lie in it.
And it's not a controversial position. I mean, 2 years on from that rally, or nearly 2.5 years on from that rally, you've got the UK Supreme Court upholding the very thing that Deeming was expelled from the Liberal Party defending it. And it's not a culture issue. I get really angry when people try and say, this is a culture war issue. This is about biology and common sense.
And they love to lean on that particular tagline as well, don't they, Peter? This so-called culture war. Let me be very clear in this. This isn't a culture war. This is a war on women's rights. Anytime that women are being silenced for simply trying to declare that sex matters, that biological reality is a thing, that's a war on their ability to speak out. And as I also pointed out in my column, so much for this support, particularly from the left, about let her speak and all these things about #MeToo and encouraging women to stand up and to share their stories. They're not being encouraged to do that in this particular situation. And I think one of the greatest issues, aside from the fact that, this is a conflation of rights between women's rights and trans rights, and let's also be clear that these are human beings that we're dealing with, but it's the conflation of the two rights is what has led to this ultimate mess. And we're seeing it play out, not just here in Australia, but globally as well. And I think we have to move to a point now where we start actually supporting women who have this view rather than shaming them and calling them, transphobes and bigots and Nazis. Shutting down the debate does not progress this conversation. And we desperately need progress because it's quite clear that this simply is not working.
Well, we only saw evidence of that just the other day. Transgender netball player knocking out opponents in a netball game. They went to the ground. There's been a win for common sense there. Two of the players, including the one you can see here, they've now been banned from competing in this particular female-only competition. But I tell you what, you shouldn't have to put that to air on news media outlets across the country for governing bodies of sport to take action.
No, but it's unfortunately the reality that we're in, Peter, because the governing bodies around the country with a multitude of sports have shown immense cowardice when it comes to this particular issue. And I think Netball Australia is one of them. Off the back of the announcement last year, when World Netball made the decision to ban transgender competitors from the competition, the conversation was brought here to Australia, and I had it with the team over at the project. Liz Ellis was also on the panel at the time, and she said that, well, trans women aren't coming at the sport in droves, regardless of the numbers. That's not the issue here. The point that we need to talk about is the integrity of the sport, the safety of the sport, and also the undermining of the very reason these two categories were created in the first place. But you won't see much more movement from Netball Australia on this issue because Liz Ellis has now been reappointed as the chair over there. So too many of our institutions are ideologically captured by this. And many of the politicians, and you've referenced Senator Claire Chandler earlier, it's a shame that she's been kicked back to the back bench, but she was someone that was advocating so fiercely on this particular front. We need more people within these relevant institutions to stand up and have a voice on this so that we can put an end to this madness and actually reverse the decisions that were made by the Gillard government in 2013 to include gender identity in the Defamation Act.
I can tell you, Lucy, Claire Chandler will be unleashed now, not even constrained one iota, because she's not in the shadow cabinet. And we rely on you. You are a sports broadcaster as well as obviously a commentator more broadly. And I always look to your comments, particularly in the realm of sport and women. So you keep up the fight, I'll keep up the fight, and Claire Chandler, she'll get back into it. I can guarantee you that. Thanks for your time.